Welcome to this introductory module on data protection relationships. Today we will explore the three key roles in data processing, so that you might later understand how these are important in ensuring certain risks are mitigated. We will explore the three roles: the data controller, the data processor, and the joint controller. These roles are crucial under laws like the GDPR and the UK Data Protection Act, and you will need to understand the responsibilities, liabilities, and obligations when handling personal data. Misunderstanding these roles can lead to serious legal and operational consequences. From involving others in data breach responses, to helping us to manage contracts appropriately. Knowing who does what is essential for both accountability and compliance. The data controller is the party which determines the purposes and means of processing personal data. They will determine which data is collected, why it is needed, and how it is used. A data controller is responsible for the security and integrity of personal data, regardless of whether the personal data is processed in-house or is outsourced to a third party. Therefore, the data controller must ensure that wherever personal data is used, there are adequate controls in place to protect it. The data processor acts on behalf of the data controller. They must therefore be acting on the instructions of the controller. The data processor does not decide how data is used. Because the controller needs to provide instructions and maintain adequate controls, all data sharing with a data processor must be supported by a contract. The contract will include the instructions to the processor, including security, help with compliance, and what happens to the data at the end of the contract. Since the data processor cannot use the data for their own purposes, the contract should ensure that the data is returned to the controller or is deleted. Let's take a look at a real-life example. An online retailer needs to process a customer's personal details in order to create an account, take payments for orders, deliver goods, and possibly undertake ongoing marketing. A courier service requires customer data to deliver goods for multiple organizations, including our online retailer. In this relationship, the retailer is the data controller. They are deciding which data they need and how it is processed. In this case, their decision is to collect customer address details to ensure the goods can be delivered. The courier is acting as a data processor for the retailer. They must use the customer data only for the purpose of delivery to the customer. They cannot decide to use it for a different purpose, such as for their own marketing. So, how does the data controller remain in control of the data once they pass it over to the courier? There must be a contract in place between the two organizations. Broadly speaking, this will cover all of the data protection controls which need to be in place and provide the instructions about what the personal data can be used for. A joint controller is a party in a relationship where two or more data controllers both decide the purpose and the means of the use of the data. Joint controllers both need the same personal data for the same or very similar purposes. For joint controller relationships, a data sharing agreement must be in place to ensure that all controllers understand their relationships and are bound by their agreement. A joint controller relationship is very much a collaboration rather than an outsourcing agreement. Let's take a look at a real-life example. An online retailer needs to process a customer's personal details in order to create an account, take payments for orders, deliver goods, and possibly undertake ongoing marketing. A product provider who sells their product through the online retailer is planning on exhibiting at a large trade show. They want to collect personal data at the trade show to improve their marketing opportunities. The product provider thinks it would be a great advantage to collaborate with the online retailer and join forces at the trade show, as this is likely to bring more people to their stand. There would be an advantage to both organizations if they could share the customer data collected. Both would use this data for their own purposes, making them joint controllers. They would need to agree how they ensured that data subjects understood the relationship, as well as the means of providing security of data when it was being shared. To achieve this, they must agree the terms of the relationship beforehand in a data sharing agreement. Finally, let's look at another type of relationship which is common but not well documented within data protection law. There are often circumstances where personal data is shared with other data controllers, but the data is to be used for different purposes. Both controllers will still define the purpose and means of the processing. Here, the relationship is more aligned to outsourcing than collaboration, so these organizations are not joint controllers. They are often described as controllers in common. There are no explicit requirements within data protection regulation to govern these relationships via a contract, as both controllers are separately responsible for the data. It is important, however, to ensure that any data subjects are aware that data is being shared with another controller. This can be achieved by a statement in your privacy notice. Let's take a look at a real-life example. Our online retailer needs to process staff details in order to agree and manage a contract of employment, pay a salary to the employee's bank account, and arrange employee benefits, such as an employee pension. Our online retailer has established a pension scheme for the benefit of staff. Staff details will need to be shared with the pension provider. The pension provider requires these details in order to set up the pension scheme for the staff member, administer the policy, and pay any pension to the staff member on retirement. Once the online retailer has provided the personal data, they have no further control over how the pension provider processes it. This would include even if they terminated their contract with the pension provider. We can now compare each of these relationships to help to complete our understanding. All types of data controllers, including joint controllers, all decide the purpose and the means for processing. They do not act on the instructions of other parties. Joint controllers will share their legal obligation, so it is important that the relationship is documented in a data sharing agreement. A data processor cannot decide the purpose and means of processing and must act on the instructions of the data controller. This is why it is important that the relationship is covered by a contract, as this ensures that the legal obligation is in place. Thank you. This is the end of this introduction to data sharing relationships. You should now continue your study with our more detailed courses covering data processor and joint controller obligations. These will review the regulation and look at practical ways to manage these third parties. Further modules include Practical Contract Management for Data Professionals, Practical Third-Party Management and International Data Transfer Risks.